little under 6.5 million votes, nearly 1 in 5 French people. Not enough to qualify for the May 6th runoff, where Marine Le Pen's shadow will loom large indeed, as for the first time ever, the incumbent fails to lead after round one. Nicolas Sarkozy on 27%, a point and a half behind socialist challenger François Hollande. Already, Sarkozy is tacking right in his first campaign rally this Monday, as we'll be seeing a little bit later. But does that make Hollande a shoo-in to unseat him? Not necessarily. Today in the France 24 debate, we size up the scores and look ahead to the surprises still to come during the next 13 days. And with us, people, they've brought tarot cards, crystal balls. Let's welcome first Jamie Keaton of the Associated Press. How are you? Also with us, Julia Cagé of Harvard University and the Paris School of Economics. Anne-Elisabeth Moutet of the Daily Telegraph and the Sunday Telegraph. And also with us, Jim Shields, whose books include the Far Right in France, From Pétain to Le Pen. Welcome, sir. The France 24 debate, where you can always weigh in on the conversation on Facebook and Twitter, where you can find us at François F24. Let's begin, shall we, with the newspapers. On Monday morning, the results still fresh. Left-leaning tabloid Libération was headlining Hollande in the lead, with below the fold there you see Le Pen's strong showing. And by the afternoon, though, evening daily Le Monde hit the stands, and it was all about Le Pen's shadow looms over second round. Julia Cagé, we'll talk about it perhaps a little bit later on. You're one of those who signed a manifesto in Le Monde calling on people to vote Hollande. But tell me, how did you feel this morning when you woke up? Did you feel like the top half of that Libération headline or the bottom half?
The bottom half. Like a lot of people I know and like a lot of people that signed the manifesto with me. It was a good news for Hollande to be at the top of the run, and is that like what socialists wanted, and it is a good sign, and it is the bad news for Sarkozy, since, as you said before, it is the first time that the incumbent is not running first after the first round of the election. But there is this big but, you know, when you are not far from 20% of the electorate that decide to vote from the extreme right, then you have a different French paysage when a lot of people are going to say that the extreme right is no more an extreme party, but is something that sounds normal in the French electoral system. And that is a problem, because all the speech of Marine Le Pen during the campaign and before, and it was also the case during her father's time, are about immigration, are about security, are about no more Europe, are about coming back to France. And there may be a problem first with Sarkozy, that decided to do all his campaign like on these topics, on immigration, on security. But that also means that everything is not perfect with the left. And this is really clear, because first, like Hollande is running first, but it is around 28%, which means just like 8 percentage points above Marine Le Pen, which is not so much. And then the extreme left in France with Mélenchon is below 20%, which means very weak, while a lot of people expected Jean-Luc Mélenchon to be above Marine Le Pen. So I was in a bad mood this morning when waking up.
And Elisabeth Moutet, how did you feel this morning?
Tired, because it was a long election and we had lots of work as journalists. But it was very interesting, because I was with people who favoured Sarkozy in the middle of the day, and they had early results, and they were in the doldrums. They felt that he'd lost the election. It was done. It was done for. They would lose the legislative elections in a month's time. And as the evening wore on, they started feeling better, because it started narrowing. The gap started narrowing between the two, and also even though Jean-Luc Mélenchon, as you said, did a very poor showing. He'd been built up. In many ways, he'd been built up by us, by the journalists. He'd been built up because they said, oh, he's a great speaker, which he is.
Still the far left's best showing since 1981.
Well, it depends if you include the communists or not. But since he's got all the communists, you know, it is 11%. It's more or less, it's good. It's better than the Trotskyites, but it's not better than Trotskyites plus the communists. So, and he comes from the Socialist Party himself. He's a splinter side of the Socialist Party. The Socialist Party, in many ways, is split and has been split since the referendum on the European question, since the Maastricht question, and since the referendum on the European
but how do you feel about the far right getting nearly 1 out of every 5 votes in this country?
Well, I am not surprised.
In an election where 80% of the people turned out.
I am not surprised. I am not surprised at all, because if you do not feel that the other politicians have failed French voters, you do not understand that why Marine Le Pen, who is basically offering a sort of more palatable companion with the nonsense that her father was peddling, you don't understand why people... It's very interesting that 36% of young people between 18 and 24 have voted for her. So the majority of it's the largest number of any candidate. And these are people who feel that they've been left by the wayside and they're looking at the wrong solutions. But if we do not identify the fact that these people have been failed by the traditional politicians, we do not understand why she's gone up 2% since her father's best showing in 2002.
All right, Marine Le Pen in her acceptance speech, crowing like she was the winner.
Dear friends, French people, nothing will ever be the same. Together, we blew apart the monopoly of the two parties of the banks and of finance.
Jim Shields, her father was this sort of anti-tax guy when it came to the economy. Her discourse a little bit different.
Yes, her father was at the outset in the 1980s anti-tax, but that changed in the mid-1990s. The presidential election of 1995 was actually a turning point in the FN's programme, because in that election, Jean-Marie Le Pen became the candidate of the working class, so to speak. He became the candidate of those who consider themselves in precarious employment, disadvantaged. And as a result of that, the FN actually started to moderate, to change and to develop its programme towards a much more welfarist and a much more protective, if I can use that term, discourse. In other words, trying to capitalise on this new constituency, the popular constituency that had opened up. So what Marine Le Pen is doing, she's continuing that, and she's continuing it very successfully, because demographically, the two groups that are striking in terms of Marine Le Pen support are the young, and also what you call the popular classes, the working classes, the lower middle class. So they are clearly now the target electorate.
All right, let's call up those numbers, and it dispels, I guess, the myth of a party of pensioners. We can show you first the under 25 crowd and see how they voted according to polling institute Ipsos. The number's not quite the same as those that you ventured, Anne-Elisabeth, 21% according to the survey there. And the next age group up, similar story in the 25 to 34s, 22%, still above the incumbent in both cases. And it's an interesting story. Jamie Keaton, how do you explain this?
How do I explain what?
How do you explain the fact that young people are attracted by the National Front?
You know, it's funny. It's hard to tell. I mean, several years ago, I was out covering the National Front out in Strasbourg, and while I was interviewing Marine Le Pen's father, and you get the sense that there's a real frustration among a lot of young people, that they feel like they've been overlooked, and that they have a certain amount of grievances that they don't feel are registering in the political body, and so how do you explain it? I mean, obviously we know the figures are high in terms of unemployment among the young in France, and a lot of them don't feel like there's any future. They feel like there are threats to their style of life, and so that seems to be sort of the makeup for why these.
And this was a campaign where she had huge money problems. She didn't go and stage mass rallies, Anne-Elisabeth, in a lot of places. And yet, she comes out, she leapfrogs the far left by sizable amount.
Well, several things. First of all, the National Front finally has learnt to use social media, and they've learned to use electronics and stuff like that. And second, big rallies make you very happy and you get on television, but she's playing along a different palette because she has always said, I'm the candidate, and her father before her used to say, I'm the candidate against the establishment. So it doesn't matter if she hasn't got all those trappings. Actually, it's a virtue in some ways. She doesn't have to show all those sort of expensive things and all this, the stuff that Sarkozy and Hollande with music and video and sort of very professional stuff. And she says, no, I'm the scrapper. I'm coming from behind and I belong to you and I don't have enough money to do that. And that plays very well. The largest group of, largest proportion in age groups in France to be unemployed are the young. So they react to this. They are the ones who do not get permanent jobs. They are the ones who get temporary jobs where they can be easily fired. And these are the people that she appeals to, and these are people who respond to that sort of jerry-built campaign. They like it.
I don't really agree about the young. If you look at the numbers we just saw before, they vote mainly for François Hollande. They did a lot of big meetings with a lot of music, with a lot of actors, musicians supporting him.
But she polls second in both cases.
That's true, but the question is like in comparison with Nicolas Sarkozy, which is pretty different. I think like the main important point for Nicolas Sarkozy, that if you are between 18 and 24 today and you are suffering for unemployment and these kind of things, the only government you ever knew in your life is the one by Nicolas Sarkozy. So if you need to find someone against who to fight, it would be Nicolas Sarkozy, because for you it is the only responsible. So I really think it's why it explains the fact that she's above him. But if you look at the program of François Hollande, which was mainly turned towards the young, with the generation contract and all the speech that was really towards the young. We are going to have employment for the young are the future of the nations, young people are our force, they are not our weakness, these kind of things. It was pretty efficient because he's turning to have 32% of people between 18 and 24 years old voting for him. So I really think that this cannot be explained by the fact that it is an anti-system vote or because the young, they don't like big meetings. I was a couple of times in meetings by François Hollande. I also attended some by Mélenchon because I wanted to feel the atmosphere. And people were mainly young there. While if you look at the video, I watched on TV the meeting by Marine Le Pen. I was not there, but I watched them on TV. And the people in the room, they were mainly old people, not young.
Well, the demographic seems to show that. I mean, if you look, the Sarkozy's supporters tend to be, in the polls tend to be older. And I think that going back to this point about where the young stand, I mean, if you have to also think in terms of there's a combination of two factors. One is there is hope for change among the young who support François Hollande, it seems. I mean, they do really feel inspired. They think that the country is in the wrong direction. And then the people who support Marine Le Pen are ones who want to almost thumb their nose at the power. And
a protest vote.
A little bit, yeah.
All right, and a little bit earlier, Jim Shields was mentioning about trying to gain an aura of respectability over what the National Front used to be. Her father ran 5 times for president, Jean-Marie Le Pen, a former paratrooper who in his youth sold pro-Hitler books and records. He's also, as of this Sunday night, a proud dad when it comes to his daughter Marine.
I'm very proud of my daughter. Of course, because I made her and I chose her.
Jean-Marie Le Pen always with the witty line, and that also is part of the populist touch of the National Front. The question I want to ask you, Jim, is this one: nearly 1 in 5 voters voting for the National Front. The rest of Europe watching this with alarm. Does that mean that 1 in 5 French people have extreme right ideas?
We've been asking this question for a quarter of a century, and there are different perspectives on it. I think the whole question of de-demonising the Front National is an important one, because that was clearly Marine Le Pen's mission on taking over the leadership at the beginning of last year. I was at the FN, or the Marine Le Pen rally, actually, and I was struck by how unchanged that was. I mean, she was playing to a gathering of the faithful. And, okay, in a sense, the script is predictable. All the usual suspects were wheeled out. And it was just like attending one of her dad's rallies. So nothing has changed in terms of the way she addresses a hall of 6,000 FN supporters. Where the change has occurred, I think, is in the way she's trying to get her message across in the media. So there are two discourses. There's one for public consumption, and there's one for, if you like, domestic consumption. Now, in a way, it was ever thus. The other thing that strikes me about de-demonising or not is the fact that just like Jean-Marie Le Pen, Marine Le Pen was on 14% the eve of the election. She delivered 18.5%. That suggests that the pollsters still don't get it right, and that voters for the Front National are still not being honest in their entirety about their voting intentions. So she retains that capacity to surprise that he had. And I think that points to the fact that if she has de-demonised the party, it's only in part.
I'd like to sort of talk about this experience because you're quite right. The thing about her personality, she's very engaging. I mean, she's friendly. She's got a sense of humour. She's got a sense of self-deprecation, which is rare in France in any politician. And she's got an entourage which actually people at the National Front don't like. You know, they say, oh, she's got Jews and Arabs around her. And what really has not changed are the militants in the Front National. These are really the ones that you saw before, and that everything you think they are, and which I'm not going to say because I would get sued.
I think one of the things about that, though, is that she is projecting a kinder, gentler version of her father. I mean, one of the things that she has done very well,
and it's working.
Apparently, one thing that she has done that her father didn't do, of course, her father got into a lot of trouble with the courts for a lot of times for various, he's been convicted on several occasions for racist, as I recall, outbursts. And she has been, a little bit like François Hollande, has been very sure-footed in making sure that he's not going to make any gaffes on the campaign trail. She has a lot of the bluster that her father has, but she also has avoided the controversy that her father very often.
She has some. Like, no more about like Second World War or no more about Nazism, but for example, if you look at all her speech that are anti-abortion, this is a real controversy in France, and she wants to be provocative when she do this kind of thing.
She wants the controversy. There's no doubt about that, and she obviously feels it. But she also knows she has learned some lessons. She seems to have learned at least a few lessons from her father.
She's also 43 years old. I mean, it's for her, lots of those things that her father was playing on are things that don't much speak to her. She's not interested. She's of her own generation.
But she's
10 years younger than the youngest of the candidates.
We're going to pick up on these points when we come back and ask, well, can the incumbent still win, and can the front runner be a shoo-in? Stay with us. It's the France 24 debate.